Her name was Lena Carter, and at 33, she had finally learned what silence could mean. 19 months earlier, she packed everything she owned into a rented truck and drove across the country without telling anyone in her family. No goodbye. No explanation. She didn't block them, didn't change her number, didn't disappear completely. She just stopped being available. If they wanted her, they could reach her. That was what she told herself as she drove away from the only life she had ever known. But deep down, she wasn't running. She was testing something. She wanted to know one thing: if she stopped showing up, would anyone notice? For 19 months, no one did. Not her mother. Not her younger sister. Not even a distant cousin or family friend. No birthday calls. No holiday messages. No, "Are you okay?" The phone stayed quiet in a way that felt louder than noise. Lena would check it some mornings, not out of hope anymore, but out of habit. Each time, the screen confirmed what she already knew. No missed calls. No messages. Nothing. It wasn't anger she felt, it was clarity. A slow, painful understanding that her presence had never been something they valued, only something they used. Everything changed the day her sister, Nora, needed something. Standing outside Lena's old apartment, confused by the silence behind the door, Nora knocked twice, then harder. When no one answered, she frowned and pulled out her phone. "This is weird," she muttered, dialing. The call rang and rang. She ended it, annoyed, not worried. "Why isn't she picking?" she said under her breath. A neighbor eventually opened the door across the hall and said casually, "Oh, she moved. Long time ago." Nora blinked. "Moved? What do you mean moved?" The woman shrugged. "Packed up and left. That's all I know." That was the moment the silence broke, but not in the way it should have. Nora didn't panic. She didn't ask if Lena was safe. Instead, she called their mother immediately. "Mom, did you know Lena moved?" she asked. There was a pause on the other end. "What are you talking about?" her mother replied sharply. Within an hour, Lena's phone lit up for the first time in over a year. Missed calls. Back to back. Then voicemails. "Where are you?" one message said. The next was louder. "How could you leave without telling me?" And then the tone changed completely. "You are so selfish, Lena. After everything I've done for you." Lena sat on her couch miles away, staring at her phone as the calls kept coming in. She didn't pick up. She just watched. One voicemail turned into 10. 10 turned into 20. By the end of the weekend, there were 47 messages waiting for her. She listened to every single one. Not one asked if she was safe. Not one asked if she was okay. Every message was about what she had done wrong. She placed the phone face down on the table and let out a slow breath. "So that's it," she whispered to herself. "That's my answer." But Lena's story didn't begin with that silence. It began years earlier, in a small kitchen that always smelled like something was burning or forgotten. She was 14 when her father died, and grief settled into the house like heavy dust. It clung to everything. Her mother stopped speaking much, stopped moving much, stopped noticing things. The television stayed on, but no one watched it. Bills piled up on the table. Days blurred into each other. And in the middle of it all stood Lena, young, confused, and quietly watching everything fall apart. One evening, her little sister Nora stood in the doorway, holding her stomach. "I'm hungry," she said, her voice small. Lena looked toward the living room. Their mother sat on the couch, staring ahead, eyes fixed on nothing. "Mom?" Nora tried again. No answer. Lena waited a few seconds, hoping, just hoping, that something would change. It didn't. So she turned away and walked into the kitchen. "Come," she told Nora softly. "Let me see what I can do." She found a box of macaroni and cheese in the pantry. She had never cooked before, but she read the instructions carefully, step by step. Water boiled over. The cheese powder spilled on her shirt. Her hands shook slightly, but she didn't stop. A few minutes later, she placed 2 bowls on the table. Nora sat down immediately and began eating. Their mother eventually walked in, took a bowl, and sat down without looking at Lena. Finally, she muttered, "Someone's being useful." Lena stood there for a second, waiting, for a thank you, for anything. Nothing came. That night, as she washed the dishes in a sink that smelled faintly of mildew, something inside her shifted. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet and firm. She realized no one was going to step in. No one was going to fix things. If something needed to be done, it would be her. She stared at her reflection in the dark kitchen window and whispered, "Okay. I'll do it." It wasn't a choice she fully understood, but it became her life from that moment forward. Years passed, and Lena became the one everyone depended on. She remembered everything: appointments, school runs, groceries, birthdays, bills. By the time she turned 31, she lived just 12 minutes away from her mother's house, but it felt like she never really left. Her phone was always buzzing. Her calendar was always full. And none of it belonged to her. One Sunday night, she sat on her bed scrolling through her schedule: blue for her mother's doctor visits, green for Nora's kids, yellow for babysitting weekends. She paused, staring at the screen. "Where am I in all this?" she murmured quietly. There was no answer, because her name wasn't anywhere on it. Her phone buzzed just as she locked the screen. A message from Nora popped up. "Can you take the kids this weekend?" "Both days. Derek is out of town." Lena stared at it for a moment. No greeting. "No, please." "No, are you free?" Just a request, as usual. She sighed softly and typed back, "Okay." She hit send. The message delivered. No reply came after that. Not even a thank you. Lena placed the phone beside her and leaned back against the wall. "Of course," she whispered to herself. "Why would there be?" That night, she kept scrolling through her calendar. Week after week looked the same. Her mother's appointments. Nora's children, Lily, Mason, and Oliver, marked across different days. Holidays she planned herself. Meals she cooked. Errands she ran. She scrolled back months, then further, then almost a full year. It never changed. Every square was filled, every hour accounted for. But none of it belonged to her. "This doesn't make sense," she said quietly. "How can a whole life not include me?" She tried to remember the last time someone made plans with her, just her. Not for help. Not for responsibility. Just to spend time. A face came to mind. Daniel, an old college friend. They had planned to meet for lunch earlier that year. 4 times, actually. And 4 times, Lena had cancelled. Once because Nora needed her last minute. Twice because her mother said she wasn't feeling well. Once because one of the kids got sick at daycare. Lena rubbed her forehead slowly. "I didn't even try to reschedule," she said. "I just stopped." Her phone buzzed again, pulling her out of her thoughts. This time, it was her mother calling. Lena answered immediately. "Hello, Mom?" "Lena, I need you to go to the pharmacy," her mother said without greeting. "My prescription is ready, and they close soon." Lena blinked. "Okay. I can go. But please don't delay," her mother cut in. "You know I can't miss it." Lena hesitated, then nodded even though her mother couldn't see her. "All right. I'm on my way." The call ended just as quickly as it began. On the drive, Lena glanced at the clock on her dashboard. 7:18 p.m. Something about the time made her pause. Then it hit her. She tightened her grip on the steering wheel. "It's my birthday," she whispered. The realization settled heavily in her chest. She hadn't said anything earlier. She hadn't reminded anyone. But still, she had expected something. A message. A call. Even a simple, happy birthday. Her phone sat silent in the passenger seat. After picking up the medication, she drove to her mother's house. The porch light was on. Lena walked up, knocked once, and the door opened almost immediately. Her mother took the bag from her hands. Good, you got it, she said. Yeah, Lena replied quietly. Then she added, Mom, it's my birthday today. There was a short pause. Not long. Just enough to feel empty. Oh, her mother said. Happy birthday. Then she turned and walked back inside. The door closed. Lena stood there for a moment, staring at the door. The porch light flickered slightly. She waited, just in case her mother would open it again. Maybe invite her in. Maybe say something more. Nothing happened. After a while, she turned and walked back to her car. She didn't cry. She didn't feel angry. It was something quieter than that. Something that felt like a thread snapping inside her chest. She didn't go home immediately. Instead, she drove to a small bakery she passed often but never entered. The sign glowed warmly in the evening light. Inside, it smelled like sugar and fresh bread. She walked up to the counter and said, Can I have one cupcake? What flavor? The girl behind the counter asked. Red velvet, Lena replied after a pause. The girl smiled and placed it in a small box. Good choice. Lena paid, thanked her, and walked back to her car. She sat in the parking lot with the engine off and opened the box. The frosting was bright and perfect, untouched by anything else. She took a small bite and nodded slightly. It's good, she said to herself. Then she looked around. Empty lot. Quiet street. No messages. No calls. She ate the cupcake slowly, alone in her car, trying to make the moment feel like something it wasn't. Happy birthday, Lena, she whispered, forcing a small smile. That night, she got home and sat at her kitchen table in complete silence. The apartment felt different. Not peaceful. Not heavy. Just clear. She opened her laptop and stared at the screen for a long time. Then she typed something into the search bar. Apartments in Oregon. She didn't know why she chose Oregon. She had never been there. But the distance, over 2,000 miles, felt right. She leaned back in her chair, looking at the results. What if I just stop, she murmured. It wasn't a decision yet. Not fully. But for the first time in years, the idea of choosing herself didn't feel impossible. Lena didn't make the decision that night. She closed her laptop, brushed her teeth, and went to bed like everything was normal. But something had already shifted. The next morning, instead of waiting for another request or emergency, she tried something different. She picked up her phone and sent a message to her mother. Hi Mom, do you want to have lunch with me this Saturday? Just us. She stared at the screen after sending it, her heart beating slightly faster than usual. This wasn't about errands or responsibilities. This was just her. Hours passed. Then the whole day. No reply came. A few days later, she tried again. This time, she texted Nora. Hey, how are you? We haven't talked in a while. The reply came quicker this time. Busy. Kids are a lot right now. Lena read it, nodded slightly, and waited for more. Maybe Nora would ask about her. Maybe she would continue the conversation. Nothing else came. The chat ended there. Lena placed the phone down slowly. Okay, she whispered. Maybe next time. But she didn't stop. Over the next weeks, Lena kept reaching out. Small messages. Simple ones. Mom, I tried a new recipe today. Nora, how's Mason feeling now? Hope your day went well. Each message was an attempt to connect, not to help or fix anything. Just to be seen. Most of them were opened. Some weren't. A few got short replies, one word, sometimes two. But none of them turned into real conversations. None of them came back with, "How are you, Lena?" By the time August came around, she had started keeping track without meaning to. One evening, she sat on her bed and scrolled through her messages, counting quietly. 1, 2, 3, she stopped at 214. 214 messages sent over months. She counted the replies. 11. She let out a soft laugh, but there was no humor in it. 203 ignored, she said under her breath. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern. That night, she opened her laptop again and went back to the search results she had seen weeks earlier. Apartments. Jobs. A different life. She found a listing for a project coordinator role at a construction firm in Portland. Same type of work she already did. Same pay range. Full benefits. She stared at it for a long time. What's the worst that can happen? She asked herself quietly. Then, before she could overthink it, she clicked apply. It took 20 minutes. When she finished, she closed the laptop and exhaled slowly. The response came faster than she expected. Within 2 weeks, she had an interview. Another week later, an offer. Lena sat at her kitchen table holding the email, reading it over and over again. "We would love to have you join our team." She shook her head slightly, almost in disbelief. No one had ever said something like that to her before, not like this. Not clearly. Not without needing something in return. "They want me," she said softly. The words felt unfamiliar, but right. She accepted the job. The following days moved quickly. She gave her notice at work. Her manager, Mr. Daniels, called her into his office. "Portland?" he asked, surprised. "Yes," Lena replied. He nodded slowly, then smiled. "They're lucky to have you, Lena. You've been one of the most reliable people here." She blinked, caught off guard. "Thank you," she said. As she left his office, his words stayed with her. Reliable. Valuable. Seen. Packing started quietly. Evenings were spent folding clothes, sealing boxes, and sorting through things she no longer needed. She sold her furniture online. Strangers came and left with pieces of her old life. The apartment slowly emptied, one item at a time. She set up mail forwarding. Closed accounts she didn't need. She even deactivated her social media. No one noticed. No messages asking where she went. No concern. It only confirmed what she already knew. There was one thing she chose not to change, her phone number. She stared at it one night before saving her contacts. "If anyone wants to reach me," she said, "they can." She wasn't hiding. She wasn't disappearing. She was simply stepping away from chasing people who never turned around. That difference mattered to her. On her last night in the city, Lena drove past her mother's house. The lights were on inside. She slowed down as she approached, her hands tightening slightly on the wheel. She could stop. She could walk up to the door. Say goodbye. Explain everything. For a moment, she considered it. Then she shook her head gently. "If they wanted to hear from me," she whispered, "they had every chance." She pressed the gas and kept driving, leaving the street, and everything attached to it, behind. 3 days later, Lena arrived in Portland. It was raining lightly, the kind of steady drizzle that seemed to soften everything around it. She parked outside her new apartment and sat in the car for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel. No noise. No phone calls. No one asking where she was or what she was doing. Just quiet. She stepped out, looked around at the unfamiliar street, and took a deep breath. "This is mine," she said softly. For the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like space. The first few weeks were strange. Lena woke up each morning and checked her phone out of habit. Nothing. She would pause, stare at the screen, then set it down. Maybe later, she would tell herself. But later never came. Thanksgiving passed quietly. She bought a small meal and ate alone at her table. Christmas came and went the same way. No calls. No messages. No one asking where she was. At first, it hurt. Then slowly, the pain turned into something else, acceptance. Work, however, was different. On her third week, a colleague named Naomi stopped by her desk. "Hey," Naomi said with a smile. "How was your weekend?" Lena looked up, surprised. The question was simple, but something about it caught her off guard. "It was good," she replied slowly. Naomi nodded. "Nice. A few of us are going hiking this Saturday. You should come." Lena hesitated for a second, then nodded. "Yeah. I'd like that." It was the first time in years someone invited her somewhere without needing anything from her. Months passed, and Lena began building a life that felt like her own. She went hiking on weekends, joined a pottery class, and started cooking meals she actually enjoyed. Her calendar slowly changed. Instead of being filled with other people's needs, it began to reflect her choices. One evening, she opened it and smiled. Every entry had her name on it. "I didn't know life could look like this," she said quietly. 19 months later, her phone rang. The number was familiar. Nora. Lena stared at the screen as it buzzed in her hand. She didn't answer. The call ended, then came again. She let it ring out. A message followed. "Hey, I need you this weekend. Call me." Lena read it once, then locked her phone. She was sitting in a pottery class, hands covered in clay. Around her, people laughed softly, shaping pieces of something new. She returned to her work without replying. Back in her old city, Nora drove to Lena's former apartment. She knocked. No answer. A neighbor eventually told her she moved. It's been a long time. Confused and irritated, Nora called their mother immediately. "Did you know Lena left?" she asked. Within an hour, Lena's phone began ringing non-stop. Her mother. Again and again. Then the voicemail started. Accusations. Anger. Blame. "How could you do this? You're so selfish." Lena listened to them later that night, sitting quietly on her couch. She took a notebook and began writing as she listened. Message after message. 47 in total. When she finished, she looked at her notes carefully. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes softened slightly. "Not one," she whispered. "Not one asked if I'm okay." She closed the notebook and sat back. The truth wasn't confusing anymore. It was clear. The next day, she opened a folder she had kept hidden away. Inside were printed screenshots of every message she had sent over those months, 214 in total. Organized. Dated. Highlighted. Proof of every attempt she had made to stay connected. She placed a single sheet of paper on top and wrote one sentence. "I tried 214 times. Here they are." She packed everything into a box, sealed it, and addressed it to her mother. The package arrived during a family gathering. Her mother opened it in front of everyone. As the pages were read, the room grew quiet. Message after message. Attempts ignored. Conversations never answered. Slowly, the story they believed began to fall apart. Questions replaced assumptions. Silence replaced certainty. For the first time, the truth was visible, not through words, but through evidence. Lena wasn't there to explain anything. She didn't need to be. Weeks later, Lena stood in her kitchen, stirring a pot of food she had learned to make years ago. The smell filled the room. Behind her, Naomi sat at the table. "This smells amazing," she said. "Thank you," Lena replied with a small smile. Later that night, Lena washed the dishes and paused for a moment, looking around her apartment. It was quiet, but not empty. Her phone buzzed softly. A message from her mother. "I read everything. I'm trying to understand." Lena stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she typed slowly. "I'm okay." She didn't rush. She didn't explain. She didn't go back to who she used to be. Because for the first time in her life, Lena wasn't trying to be needed. She was finally choosing to be seen.